Okay, so I am currently employed by Penn State to do research, and that is the result of a grant that I got. So let me just tell you the backstory. So when I introduced myself last night, I told you I started keeping bees in the mid-1990s. That's when I was an undergrad, where I got fascinated by bees by being an entomology major, and there was a whole entire 3-credit course with a lab in the apiary all about honeybees, and it was just awesome. And I just fell in love with bees. And then after that, I ended up going on to graduate school in Canada, in Manitoba, where they winter indoors, and I was able to study honeybees and Varroa mites there to get my PhD. And then I was home with children, and my husband was a professor. He's an ornithologist, so you might get the joke that is always told about, yeah. So we study the birds and the bees. And my name's Robyn, so, you know. And what? And you have children. Yeah, but it took us 8 years to figure that out. Slow learner. Anyway, so I was home with babies, but I was lucky enough to hook up with someone that I don't know what your opinion is, but Dennis Van Engelsdorp. So he's an academic, and he's often interviewed about CCD and stuff like that. But it was great because I was home with kids. I had just gotten my PhD, and you have to stay active. You can't just not publish for 10 years or whatever and expect to ever have a career. So he was kind enough to give me contract work. At first it was counting Varroa mites on sticky boards, and then I graduated into, writing papers and things. So it was like I could work from home with my children and stay active in honeybees. So then I ended up, yes?
You had a PhD counting mites with that.
Yes.
Just clarify.
In fact, I counted a lot of mites to get my PhD. I tell people that, you don't have to be a genius to get a PhD by any means, but you have to, for me, I had to know how to count, and I had to be persistent. It's all about persistence, right? I got to work with him and stay active, and then I started teaching at a university, Kutztown University in Pennsylvania, and I was teaching non-majors intro bio stuff, and doing research sort of on the side, really, really part-time. Then I got a grant to do my first, what felt big to me at the time, project. I got $55,000, which paid basically for equipment and bees for 36 colonies and to follow them for 2 years. And so that project was about looking at honeybee colony management and its effect on honeybee health. And that's what I'm still doing. The first project was 36 colonies, 2 treatments. One I called conventional, and the other one was organic management. And so what you're going to see as the theme of what I do now, I have what I call a systems approach. So I'm not the one that's looking at what is the exact chemical that gets the bees to get the mite out of the cell. I'm a very applied, practical beekeeping researcher where I use full-size colonies and apiaries, and I do what beekeepers do. That's my goal, is I want to act like what beekeepers are normally doing, and then I want to see what effect it has on the bees. So I did conventional versus organic. So some differences between the two were conventional got wax foundation, or my organic was foundationless, which I had great success with. I found that if I went back at least every week for the first month and kept reminding them of what a straight comb was, it went extremely well. Eventually they attached to the sides, and I was even able to, use a radial extractor and not have them blow out or anything, with no wires or anything. So that was an awesome experience, my first time ever without foundation. But what this all comes down to me, is Varroa mite management, right? So in the first project, I don't feel like I did a really good job of differentiating between the two. because I didn't want to use the hard chemicals. I just don't like them. I didn't want to use Amitraz, and I didn't want to use, antibiotics prophylactically or any of those things, which I maybe should have done to have a proper conventional treatment. But what I did use was formic acid in both, but I had a different approach to the timing. So for conventional, I said, okay, it's the honey flow's over and they're going to start making winter bees, so I have to treat them all. So for conventional, it was like calendar basis. And for organic, I followed each colony as an individual, and I said, okay, this one got up to 5 mites per 100 bees, so I need to treat this one. And then the other ones didn't get treated because their mite levels were not that high. So I followed them for 2 years. The second year was a disaster because I had a bear come through and destroy a whole bunch of stuff twice. And I'm working on writing up the results of the first year. But in the end, what I found out was neither one of those really was good. I didn't feel that I had good overwintering in either one. I didn't feel like anything that I did made a difference or made it better for the bees. They were both kind of like, eh. And so I kind of revisited the concept, and I wanted to go all the way over to treatment-free, but I was kind of afraid, and I was discouraged, actually. You see a lot of dissent about treatment-free beekeeping, and so I wasn't ready to go all the way down to that end of the spectrum. Plus, it was just a small little study, and I happened to meet Margarita Lopez Uribe, who's a brand new professor at Penn State. You may have heard of Marianne Fraser. This was her replacement after she retired. And I met her at the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers Association meeting, and I saw what she was doing. You guys might be actually interested in her work because she's studying feral colonies living in trees. But she's very interested in the immune system. So what she's doing is she has citizen scientists report to her, there's this feral colony in my barn or in the tree or whatever. And when she confirms that they've at least overwintered, so hoping that they're truly feral, then she pairs it with a commercial colony somewhere nearby, and she samples the foragers from each of those, and she looks at their immune system, and she's found differences. So that was very, very interesting to me. Her first name's Margarita, like the drink. And then she has a hyphenated last name, so Lopez hyphen Uribe, U-R-I-B-E. U-R-I-B-E. Yeah, so she studied feral colonies and found these differences, like their immune system is reacting more strongly. And so I was very excited to see that. I was like, you know what, I think it would be great if I studied management systems side by side to add in the component of the immune system. That'd be really exciting. I also didn't mention that the first grant included a researcher, Brenna Traver, that does nosema studies. So I had a nosema person in the lab. I'm not a lab person. I like when I bring the samples to people and then they send me the numbers. I'd rather be in the field. So Brenna does nosema, and I do all the field work and whatever samples I can take in the field, and then Margarita studies. She can do anything. She can do virus analysis and immune system analysis and microbial, like the gut microbes and things like that. So we all three got together and wrote a grant proposal to the USDA from an organization called OREI, which is Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative. So these are people that really, really care about organic in general. And to me, treatment-free is a version of organic. And they were excited and they funded the work. So I quit working at Kutztown and moved over to Penn State just to do this project. So that's what I want to tell you about, is this project. So this is a much larger project. It makes my other one look like nothing. So this spring, in the next month or two, everything's going to begin arriving. We're going to be starting almost 300 brand new colonies on brand new equipment. So that's much more than 36. So there's a lot of layers to this, so I want you to just wait until I explain the whole thing. So we're based in Pennsylvania, and initially we were going to have 6 sites throughout Pennsylvania. 2 of them would be near the university, which is central PA, and then up and down the eastern part of the state. And this was purely, convenient for us, because I live in the eastern part of the state and we have somebody else that lives in the central part of the state. And so each site, so that's 6 in Pennsylvania, there'd be 2 in State College and 4 going down the eastern part of Pennsylvania. If you look at a map of Pennsylvania, it's quite variable geographically. You can, elevation and the weather and things. So I wanted to spread it out, because I don't want to just say what management is like in this one location. I wanted to have that replication across the state in the different regions. So Penn State put out a press release saying, hey, we got this money and we're starting this research. And the result of that was like a flood of emails. And one of them was this woman in West Virginia, Perry Keitzman, and she is doing something awesome down in West Virginia. So you may have heard about a honeybee keeping initiative there, where the people that are all out of work because the coal mines have shut down, they're having an initiative where they teach them how to keep bees. And this is the one in charge of that. And so she's like, hey, we're going to get 1,000 new colonies this year. What do you say? I do some research and I'll replicate what you're doing, only do it in West Virginia. So she was already buying bees and equipment and everything. So that was less expense for me. I didn't have to buy her that stuff. She just had to buy to my specifications. And so she's going to have 2 sites in West Virginia. So now we have 8 total sites. Each site is an organic farm. Everything I do has to be on organic land because of the funding agency. Even though it's not crops, and I don't think it matters that much because there could be conventional right over there, we have to follow this rule because of where the money came from. So I found farms, and I just recently visited each one to just make sure that I was going to have, south facing with a windbreak. I can drive up to them and everything like that. And so remember, there's 8 total farms. So if you go to one single farm, there's going to be 3 apiaries, each of them with 12 colonies. And those 12 colonies are going to be 4 conventional, 4 what I'm calling IPM. I'm thinking about changing the name to IVM. So instead of integrated pest management, maybe integrated Varroa management, because Varroa is such a forefront. Anyway, so 4 conventional, 4 integrated, and 4 treatment-free.
Are you worried about drifting at all?
Of course I am. He asked if I'm worried about drifting. Yes. The thing is, even on a farm, you have such microclimates. One set of hives could be up and one could be down, and I don't want all my treatment-free colonies to die because they had crappy airflow. So I have to have all of the treatments in each apiary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything I can to prevent drifting by orientation of the hives and maybe different painting on them, so that they recognize their home. And I'm going to do the best that I can to, it's not going to be like a straight line of white boxes all facing exactly the same way. I'm going to do lots of different things to try to avoid drifting. One of the issues, anyway, I don't want to go there yet. Okay, so in order to set up this experiment, I don't want to just be this researcher saying, I'm going to study it this way. What I did is I brought together a big group of beekeepers from Pennsylvania in each of these management systems, and we had a whole day meeting with breakout sessions into the different groups, and hours were spent determining what is done in a conventional management system. What would you do if you were doing IPM? And what do treatment-free beekeepers actually do? So from that, I got input on everything you can imagine. What type of bottom board, what type of entrance, how big is the entrance, when, this, that, every single aspect of beekeeping had to be discussed. Now, what I settled on, when I sent it out to people, they were like, are these best management practices? Because I don't think it's fair to say this instead of that. And I was like, no. We're calling these average management practices. I'm not saying this is the best way to keep bees. I think these are all 3 different systems for keeping bees. And I want to study what that means for the bees. So I don't know where Dee went, but I'm sad because everyone asks her, prove it, prove it, prove it. That is actually my goal. I am the scientist that's gathering the data that I hope is going to be what everyone can point to and be like, we've had all these anecdotes, we've been saying this for 20 years, and now we have the proper replication and all of that. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm trying to gather the data, show that, I can't be biased, so I'm hesitating to say that it's the best or like it's going to work and it's going to be perfect, because it's going to be whatever it's going to be, right? We're going to just write down the numbers, collect the data, collect the samples, and we'll see how it shakes out. To me, if we find out that they're all the same, that would even be amazing, right? So you can be like, you and you, quit fighting because you're both awesome, or whatever. Like I said, there's no bias in me. I just go and I collect the data. So you might be... The initial study, the funding is for 2 years of following the bees, but I very much hope to continue that on for many years after that. This grant is a great seed to get me it's all brand new equipment. So this is going to be my building year. They have to build all the comb in every single box. And
Did you say you're going foundations? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not, actually. I'm not this time.
You're just going regular 5.4 cell?
Well, let me tell you the details then.
Okay.
So I have my spread. I know them, but I want to make sure I get to everything. So what I think you're probably most interested in is what are the protocols for treatment-free beekeeping. You don't care about the conventional stuff or the IPM stuff, because that's nothing you would do. So hopefully what you're going to hear is representative of what the average treatment-free beekeeper does.
But it's very important that you follow what the conventional and the organic people are doing to really actually compare to what's going on in the real world.
Exactly. To me, the conventional is like the control. It's like what most people do, right? And then the IPM, they're a little more progressive. They're a little bit more toward natural. They're not going to use hard chemicals or antibiotics. They're more organic. So formic is okay and that kind of stuff. And then treatment-free. And so I've been trying to learn exactly what treatment-free beekeepers do. However, because it is research, sometimes I have to do things that you wouldn't do, but it's important for my work. For example, every single colony is going to be in 10 frame Langstroth equipment because I don't want that to be a variable. I'm also forcing the issue of small cell. So in conventional and IPM, I'm using 5.4 foundation. It's going to be a wooden frame with plastic foundation that's sprayed with wax. For treatment-free, I'm having to make those because it doesn't exist. So for small cell, the only plastic foundation that you can get is the all-in-one, the Man Lake PF 120. But I really want, for many reasons, I want wooden frames. So I had to buy wooden frames and all-in-one and cut out the piece and stick it in. I also had to special order it without wax because I don't want all that contaminated wax with coumaphos and fluvalinate and whatever. So I'm buying D's wax to paint on there to get the best I possibly can.
You know your beeswax isn't contaminated.
It's D's.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Where you get new wax, it's clean. From D.
I'm getting D's wax. I'm buying D's wax.
She's not saying beeswax, she's saying beeswax.
A stranger in Pennsylvania tried to find clean wax. She couldn't find it here and went down to Brazil, and because Brazil's supposed to be this more organic type thing, and she found out that the chemicals in the wax there, she couldn't find the same chemicals that were here, but there were other
Different ones.
chemicals in theirs down there, and it was contaminated also. And I don't know what the end result of that was, but she was having a difficult time finding wax that she could use for whatever she was using.
Right.
The stick people, they buy it from Africa. They have people in Africa that collect it. And they buy these big, huge containers and they ship them over.
Really?
Lipstick, and things like that. That's the only wax they use.
That is such a shame that we don't have clean wax. But I'm getting the best wax I can, I believe, by getting it from D. From D. Lusby's wax.
And she's nowhere near any agriculture.
She's nowhere near any ag. Yeah.
Where are you getting the bees?
Where am I getting the bees? Very good question. So that was something that kept me up at night for a really long time. So I have these 3 different groups. Technically, they would keep different bees, right? And so at first I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get these bees for this one and these bees for that one and these bees for that one. And then I was like, this feels wrong because I'm not going to know if it was the management. Everyone's going to blame the genetics. Like no matter what the result is, it's going to be all about the genetics. So I was like, okay, they all need to be the same genetics. So where do you find 300 colonies of small cell treatment-free bees? Limited supply. So at first I had an order with Wolf Creek, and that was all set until it was canceled. They canceled the order near the end of January. And, you know, I wasn't really convinced that they were the best possible bees. I just thought that it was my only option at the time, right? And so I had to scramble to find a new solution. And by the end of January, a lot of bees are already sold. So I panicked for like 5 minutes, and then I was like, you know what? I can do this. I will find a place. So I called Fat Bee Man. What's his name? Donald Kuchenmeister? Yes. So I called him, and we talked for a while, and he said, you know, I cannot give you 300. Sell you 300, but I can do 100. So I was like, okay, they're small cell. I need at least 72, I think it is. No, 96 to fill all of my needs. So I then ordered the other 2/3 from a conventional bee breeder in Georgia. So they're both coming from Georgia.
No, Russian.
No Russians at all.
No,
You buy breeder, Russian breeders.
but these initial packages are what I'm calling my comb builders. That is their entire purpose. I'm gonna get them to build comb. They're supposed to come in mid-April to Pennsylvania. They're gonna build comb until I can get local feral stock from my area and requeen them all. So the project is really of interest. The interesting part is after they're requeened. So I luckily have 2 of the people that were in my stakeholder group that were helping me decide on all of the details of treatment-free beekeeping. Collect swarms, cutouts, feral, everything they possibly can. And they have, you know, their stock that they've been working on for at least 5 years. And one of them actually works for a commercial operation in New York State, which is even farther north, which, by the way, I wonder if taking bees from the north-south is a lot better than south-north. So I feel more comfortable with that. So between those two people who collect cutouts and feral colonies, they're going to make me queens in New York State at the end of June. When that commercial guy is done using his mating nukes, they're going to take that over and make me queens from local stock. So they're all going to get those queens. So I'm actually super excited because I think it's way better than all Wolf Creek. Like, I think it's a much better, especially after what I've been hearing at this meeting, having local stock is very important. So what's going to be curious is to see how do those bees do in a conventional management system, right? Maybe when they get on big comb, they're going to start, they can't control the mites, but they can in treatment-free.
So you're using all the same queens for all the hives?
Yes. After they've had comb built, and I need to get the queens in early so that they can make the winter bees. I have to have those queens making my winter bees because even Don said that his won't overwinter well in Pennsylvania because they're not good at that. So I absolutely have to get that done, by mid-July so that I know the winter bees are made by those local feral genetics. Okay, so there's a bunch of other differences between, let's just see what else. Hello. So for the treatment-free colonies, I also, not only did I have to buy special frames and cut them and make those special, but I had to special order boxes, which I'm having all roughened up on the inside to encourage the propolis envelope, because I've heard how very important that is. And so Brushy Mountain apparently has done a little bit of it for some researchers in the past, but were able to make me all the boxes I need they had their guys do, I haven't seen them yet, I think they're gonna arrive maybe in a couple days, roughen it up so that it's like the inside of a tree. What to me, treatment-free beekeeping is like as natural as you possibly can, only in a box that you can manage, right? So making it like the inside of a tree. So solid bottom board, roughened inside. I'm giving them 4.9 foundation because while I think the feral bees will build small cell, I really need it to be small cell. And I need some consistency because it's research. I hate that I'm using plastic, but if I give them wax, they're going to change it to whatever size they want. So to me, that's forcing the issue. If I was a treatment-free beekeeper, I probably would never I would probably go foundationless. But because it's research, that's why I decided on that plastic foundation to force the issue.
So would you rather have small cell wax foundation?
If it was clean.
Well, if you're going to use wax.
I can't afford that much wax. I had to buy 100 pounds just to paint them.
You don't really make it a thin.
Yeah, I did look into, I went to some of the companies and I said, could you make me small cell wax foundation, and it didn't work out. Not for those quantities,
So there's a guy in Spain that makes the presses to make your own small cell foundation.
I'm not trying to talk in or out or anything, but Daydent does the 4.9 wax, and they used to let you have them make it from your own wax. I don't know if they do anymore. but they used to.
Well, the other thing is I'm going with all mediums,
I'm just offering you.
and Dayton's all,
Actually, I think you got a great plan, so this.
okay, so far so good.
Just so I can do some math, it's 96 colonies of treatment-free. How many boxes per colony of wax that you would need?
3.
3, so 96.
Did you say mediums or Ds?
Mediums,
Your mediums?
yes.
Okay, that's good.
So because you can only get 100 bees, you're starting off just putting together the treatment-free colonies.
No, I got 100 small cell treatment-free packages and 200 standard commercial packages to be, and it's not exactly that because it only adds up to 288, but it's you know, by the dozen kind of thing.
That should be, if you did it with foundation, that should be less than 40 pounds
Well, I'm buying 100 and then next year, so I'm only planning on them being able to draw out 3 boxes in this first year and then 3 more potentially in the second year.
Couldn't do that in Arizona.
It might average up to that. If you have a bumper crop year, though, they might draw 5 or 6.
Yeah, well, I'll have to,
Yeah, I run mediums and I'm in a similar class to Pennsylvania. I've gone 5 or 6 easy on good years.
on all new boxes with all new foundation. Okay, well, I'm prepared to buy the more. It's just all of my equipment right now is 35 pallets worth.
I was wrong, it's more like 400 pounds.
I can afford, I'm good.
It's just a decimal point. But I'm curious if you know the
Spring when you get them?
That was embarrassing.
You have to get
That's the other thing. I'm going to feed them all, and I'm going to feed them all Pro Sweet dirt for 6 gallons each in the spring. And then I never ever want to feed the treatment-free bees again. I'll keep honey in the freezer to give back to them, you know, if that's what I need to do, or I'll leave it on till spring and then extract if there's excess. But I looked into the price of organic honey, and it was way out of my price range, not to mention my reservations about feeding them bee diseases.
Or not being organic.
Or it not being organic.
I mean, who really has organic honey?
Well, they can,
USDA defined it.
they get it from Brazil, and it was only going to be $3 a pound, but still, that was like $25,000 worth of honey. And with the reservations I had with diseases and stuff, I said, you know what, they're just going to get something artificial just to get them through the comb building.
Are you giving artificial pollen, so it's too?
Not this spring. I wasn't going to give them any protein
Usually
this
the
spring.
packages of pollen up there anyway, it's waste. I'm curious if you know what Brushy Mountain does to rough up the inside of the box. If you don't know.
Oh, I do, because I went to the conference and stood talking to Shane Gebauer for like all day one day.
What are they doing?
They are doing some sort of metal wire brush, but like on a drill, like a mechanized.
Running against the green with a wire wheel.
Yes.
That makes sense. That's what
Yeah.
I would thought would make it work the best, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never tried it.
So there were 2 other options that we considered. One that Marlo Spivak has studied quite a bit is like buying propolis traps and stapling them on the inside. I didn't like that idea, plus it messes up your frame spacing and stuff. The other one is grooves, and apparently wax moths and beetles love that. And so the scratching just makes the most sense to be the most natural.
Lumber, build the boxes on it.
Yeah, but they couldn't do that very quickly for me because that was a special order of wood, and this way they could just pull boxes off their shelf and do it and ship it. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, will all of those have it or just the treatment free?
Just treatment free. The others will be standard.
I've got a question. Why did Wolf Creek cancel on it? Because they couldn't supply it?
They said cold weather killed brood and stuff. I mean, I asked for could I have fewer or a later date, and they said they need to take care of their other customers.
What was the date you were shooting for? I'm curious.
Like mid-April. Anyway, I'm kind of glad. You know, I feel like it's a better plan.
Do you have the basic specifications of the 3 categories written out somewhere, like 10 points?
I do, actually.
Email us or?
There's a website that has a basic description of my project, and it has the locations of the, you know, where the bees are going to be and stuff.
Okay.
So, do you want to write it down?
Oh, you should give out the locations.
No, it's just the towns. It's not the, it's. So, it's Margarita's website, so it's lopezuribelab.com, and this time it's just all lowercase, no hyphens or anything. So, LOPEZURIBELAB lopezuribelab.com/comb. So, you know, a difference between Kutztown University and Penn State University is that as soon as you start, you need like a logo and a you know, a slogan and stuff for your work and a web page. So that was all new to me. So COMB stands for Conventional and Organic Management of Bees. So that's what we call it, the COMB project.
So what was after Uribe?
Uribe.com/comb. LopezUribeLab.com. Is somebody calling it up? I couldn't get the internet to work in here on my computer. Okay, so
What does COMB stand for again?
Conventional and Organic Management of Bees. And we have a little logo with these little hexagons and stuff.
Gee, that is so original.
Let's see.
I don't mind them, don't get me wrong.
Well, it's a little it has a lot more meaning to me. So this whole thing, I'm actually working on this review paper where we're trying to have a figure that shows you the beekeeping continuum. I've been working on this for like a year, and every iteration is terrible. Like, it's really hard to make into a single figure. A table would be much easier. So the continuum of beekeeping, where you have like conventional, everything in between, and treatment-free, and then you have all these lines with like, what kind of comb are you using, and what are you feeding, and what are you doing about Varroa, and what, you know, it's like, but I got complicated, and then I went back to simple, and I just made this continuum of these hexagons, and they were, you know, from dark to light, to try to show that. But they're supposed to be representative of the variety of beekeepers and the variety of pollen colors and the, you know what I mean? And so that comb logo is supposed to have like 3 different colors, and to me it has a lot of meaning that, you know, if you just looked at it you might not get, but that's where it comes from.
But symbols are good that way.
Symbols are,
Meaning that isn't, that's
yeah. Like, you need to talk to the artist to find out what the picture really means. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to hear about all the different aspects, so we talked about the comb builders, and then the queens are going to be all the same. Treatment-free boxes are rough on the inside. We have our 4.9 foundation with a wooden frame, painted with clean wax, a solid bottom board. One thing that the stakeholder group decided on is that instead of using an inner cover, which can be a place for pests to hide and things like that, to use duck cloth. So you use a standard lid, but you put this tightly woven cloth, which partially is a propolis trap in a way, and it eliminates that spacing for like ants and beetles and things like that.
Well, it doesn't really, but it's a cheap inner cover.
Cheap inner cover as well, and it works. So we're going to go with that.
What's cheaper is you get the feed bags. They stick less. They're a little less sticky. So
I haven't purchased the material yet, so.
well, I've got piles of them at home, but if you want to get, I gotta think, Michael Palmer and Kirk Webster both just buy the bags empty from the people who make the feed. They don't even buy the feed, and then, you know, they just buy them empty. But it's plastic. It's like plastic. It's woven like burlap, except it's plastic, and so it doesn't stick so much. So you can peel it back better. That's
Mine used to
Just like you
be
get chicken, like you buy
on
chicken
it.
feed in?
Oh, you'll get propylation.
Yeah, it's like you get a lot of kinds of feed in, yeah. And they even put seeds in it. But you don't want the ones with seeds because they're always putting poison on those. But you can you quite often get the feed bags free from somebody who has horses or chickens or something, because they're not putting medication in them. Or you can just buy them from the company that makes the feed. They'll just sell you the bags. That's how Michael Palmer does it. He just buys the bags.
The
But-
sugar, the pink sugar that you buy at Walmart or wherever, they've changed the bag, so now it's a food bag style.
Huh. Well, anyway, that works for an inner cover, but I don't see that it eliminates your space, because if there's any space at all, there's these little ants that get in any little gap. But in my experience. They bring all their eggs up there. Have you ever seen them?
Flame torch.
They get everywhere.
Burn 'em.
Yeah. You don't really need an inner cover, but if you want an inner cover, that's the cheapest inner cover.
Right.
And it works fine. It works as well as an inner cover.
Good. I won't be using a queen excluder of any kind. She can go where she wants. We talked about feeding. So in Pennsylvania, it's not really that cold in winter, so we don't need to wrap the hives or anything, but we do generally put styrofoam in under the lid just to prevent the, moisture dripping back down when it hits the cold space. So that's all we'll be doing there.
You're doing that on all of them, right?
Yeah, on all of them, yeah.
I don't know any commercial beekeepers that have any kind of inner cover. They're all flat, migratory.
Well, that's another thing about this work. I'm not trying to emulate someone that has thousands of colonies. I feel like I'm more toward the sideliner, up to 500, sort of. I don't expect like people that go to almonds to do the same thing as someone with fewer colonies. So, but yeah, you're right. So Varroa is the most serious issue for this work because, absolutely no chemicals will go in at any time. However, I will be monitoring Varroa. So every single colony is going to have an alcohol wash every single month, well, until it's too cold to open the colonies. So I'm going to be following what's happening with the mites, but I'm generally not going to do anything about it for treatment free. I'm going to use more signals to decide if there's a problem, right? So, if they can handle more mites and live and look healthy and they're not, all having crippled wings and failing and whatever, then I don't see a problem.
Can I throw something?
Yes.
You might find some of these previous small cell studies, they're always having no drone in the colony. Dee's pseudo-drone theory is that on Apis cerana, if you look up the normal worker size on Apis cerana, it actually varies a lot. It is down like between 4.3 and 4.9 or so. And the drones are consistently pretty much the same size, and they're 5.4. So our Apis cerana drone cell is 5.4. Our standard foundation is 5.4. Now, there's several pieces of research on why the Varroa prefer drones. Is it the cell size or is it the smell of the larva? And they've done that by putting worker larvae in drone cells and drone larvae in worker cells and all that stuff. So what it comes down to is it seems to be both. It seems that they can sense the pheromones enough that triggers them a little bit, and the size seems to trigger them a little bit. Anyway, on Cerana, they're mostly infesting drones. So I have 20-25% drone colony in all my colonies. I got no Varroa problems. So I would be curious to know the answer to this question, and I'm just thinking maybe you could squeeze this into this if you're counting things. I want to know, are they infesting the drones at a much, much higher rate, the workers at a much lower rate, and actually reproducing more successfully but doing less damage? In the spring, perhaps more successfully, and in the summer, when there's less drones, they're not reproducing as successfully, and by fall, they're not reproducing very successfully at all because there's almost no drone comb, and they're almost consistently infesting drone and very seldom infesting workers on small cell. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have time to count them all. But if you're counting things anyway, pull a little bit of worker out, a little bit of drone out of all your different methods and see where are the Varroa.
I love that idea, and I didn't mention, we had a long discussion about the need for drones in the colony, and so what I decided to do is, since I'm cutting out the foundation anyway, I'm actually leaving an inch on both sides of every piece of foundation so they can do whatever they want. No, only treatment free. Yeah. We had talked about putting a couple shallow frames in and then having them build below, but that feels very messy to me, and like it's going to stick to the bottom and all that stuff. So I incorporated it into the frame itself we're going to cut an inch short on both sides.
One of the best kept secrets in beekeeping is they do fine on medium-sized frames in deep boxes.
Which gives you a lot of drones.
Right.
Frame down, but
Right,
it doesn't touch
right.
the bottom and it doesn't.
I hear you.
Yeah,
You say that, but I've done that and then had them build a comb, here's all my frames, and had them build a comb across, another 4 inches across this way, that didn't work out so
Or down
well.
between the frames and the next box down, and they'll squeeze it in instead of doing something else. They do
Yeah.
all kinds of goofy stuff, so.
This feels the easiest to me for management. By the way, the IPM people are having me put a spacer at the top and letting them build in there, and then I'm going to cut it out every time, like as drone brood removal for them. Yeah.
Can I have all the scraps that you cut up?
For real?
If you're available, I'll pay for shipping.
I don't know why you're laughing. Are you serious?
He's serious.
Yeah.
You only have to make one cut, right? So it'd be 2-inch piece.
Okay,
Well, we have to cut all 4 sides anyway because we're popping it into a wooden frame. It's just a matter of how big the template is.
No, but I'm saying you just move it over and take your 2 inches off as opposed to an inch from each side. So
But I have to cut, but I'm using something like that, so I have to cut off 4 sides.
all 4 sides
Oh, I
anyway.
see.
Yep,
She already has to cut all 4 sides.
Right.
yep.
Well, I'm pleased, I think you need the drone comb in there, I think that's essential.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you made a suggestion of something that I could learn more from this project than I was planning, because I've been asking for that. You know, I'm doing all this replication over, you know, what else can we learn, right? So to do that would be fantastic.
Uncapping
You
for it
have
to
to
pull out X
uncap a
number.
certain number of drone cells and inspect
And worker cells,
a
yeah.
certain number of worker cells
Yeah.
and inspect them in order to generate those numbers. But those are data that others have done previously. So all you really need to do is look at somebody else's protocols and kind of write up your own and say, we're going to integrate this on, you know, all or some subset depending on the time you have.
Right, and it may have to be next spring when we actually do that measurement, because this spring is crazy.
Yeah, and that would be fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
It would probably be better for it to be next spring and
The numbers would be
confusing
more
for it to be this
significant.
spring because you're just establishing hives. It's in those established hives in that second and third year where things are gonna stabilize probably more than anything else.
Right,
You need more than 2 years. How do you fund, everything's paid for at that point, where your prospects and getting this continued funding?
keep applying, keep writing and keep applying.
Yeah, I don't decide, the bees decide. I've never called any drones. I never called. I think they have whatever they want. Yeah. But I'd say it runs around 25%, yeah, at least 20%.
Does anybody have a question right now?
Sounds really
Comment? It's terrifying.
You seem really excited about it.
Go ahead.
What do you estimate your package installation failure rate is going to be?
Oh, 25%, 20%, something like that. So we toyed with the idea of just having 9 in each apiary, and I was like, no, we need 12 so that we really have 9. So that's
a good plan.
yeah, that's the plan.
So you put them into just a single first, and then add the.
Probably 2 because they're mediums. Put two mediums out.
Well, I'd install them in one. It depends if you got.
1, it's like this big.
I put them in a 1 5-frame medium nuke, a 3-pound package. They do great. They just explode
For
because
the first.
of course, see, part of this is my climate. It's still cold at night when I'm putting bees in, and they need to keep the brood warm. And so putting them in a small box, they can do a lot better job. And then by the time they've outgrown this box, the weather's a whole lot warmer. Now I could probably pile on whatever I want. It doesn't make much difference. But that first
I can
little
do 1
bit,
box.
They have trouble keeping it warm, you know, and you can end up with some chalk brood just because you got some chilled brood. If you get slightly chilled brood, you end up with a bunch of chalk brood. You get really chilled brood, you end up with some dead brood. So I can avoid that by putting them in a smaller box. So I usually put them in 1 box.
The package
And when they fill that
definitely
box up, then I add the next box.
It would definitely fit in a single medium box, and you'd have at least 4 weeks before you'd have to worry about it being, you know, more bees around.
Well, the thing is, the second box is, well, I'll have to have a second box with feeders.
What temperature range
What
would
do you
you
got,
want to
frame
be
feeder?
like using to worry about?
I'm doing 2 frame feeders so I can fit 2
It's
gallons.
a 2-frame wide feeder.
Yeah.
So put it in one box, put the package in the one box, with the feeder, and feed it. Now you're down to my 5-frame nuke again. So,
Yeah.
Wow, that's really tiny.
No, it's not.
Okay.
exactly the right size.
Okay,
It's exactly
okay.
the right size for that many units. Now, for about 3 weeks, now once they start, in 3 weeks, they're gonna have most of that home grown, and you're gonna have to add a box, so they've got work to do. But in
Right.
3 weeks, the weather's warmer. They've gotten a little bit of a head start now. So
Yeah,
3 weeks
yeah.
later, you don't wanna go more than about 3 weeks, because then the bees start to emerge, and then and then it gets crowded real fast. So you want to beat that. You want to beat when those start to emerge, because then you might have a bunch of swarms.
Okay.
So within 3 weeks, I try to get the second box on.
You're gonna use all mediums?
Yeah. With my other project, I did a deep and then mediums from there. And, if they're all consistent, it's so much more convenient because you can move frames up and down. And it was, yeah.
Two-frame feeder, that'll be perfect.
Yeah. Good.
You got the hooks and ladders, the tubes and
I was,
what do they call them? We got a name for it.
yeah, I know what you mean.
And like
No, I didn't
hooks
like,
and ladders, but it's not right. It's a different.
yeah. We're just going to have floats, I guess.
They just call it ladders.
Ladders.
Call them ladders.
Ladders. Yeah.
I like the ones with the ladders on them because they drown a lot less bees, but I've liked them pretty well. I bought a whole bunch of them this last year because I was doing a whole bunch of creamery and I needed a bunch more feeders. I've had good luck with them. And
I have 36 full deep of those sitting around not getting used. From my other project, I bought the deep version with the ladders, and now they're just in storage.
Oh, you can
So.
convert those real easy. You take the wooden thing out, you slide those up, things up to where they just fit in the medium and cut them off.
Then they don't have hooks. They just sit on the bottom board.
The original ones never had hooks either. You used to put a drawing pin on the side of the wood to keep them in place.
Really? Oh well, I bought the new ones already anyway.
But don't all of them have the little things you can put the O-rings on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
O-rings, yeah. Yeah, they do.
For the tube that goes in.
Yeah.
The original ones never had hooks at the top, so you put them in and you put a drawing pin on the side to keep in position. The new ones all have a rim on the top that sits on top of the wood.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, so none of the other pests I don't think are any big deal to talk about. Like,
Nosema when you're feeding 6 gallons of syrup. You don't think that's a problem?
I don't think it's a problem.
Well, I've never been in Pennsylvania, but ACES comes out and checks mine every year. I think an acceptable level for Nosema is like 1 million spores per bee, and they always count 0. That's my Nosema count.
And you feed 6 gallons of syrup?
Oh, no, I don't feed that much syrup, but if I can install a package, I feed them syrup.
How much?
Till they're stuck blooming and the weather's warming up, I think they can get their own, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I just feel like when you're overfeeding syrup, and maybe it's not as bad with
I certainly
sucrose
think
as corn syrup, but definitely the commercial beekeepers, and there's been some other studies saying if you're feeding straight syrup,
I do think it can contribute to Nosema because
it's hard on their guts.
because of the pH of the syrup is exactly what you want to if you wanted to culture Nosema.
But what are you gonna do that's not gonna be hard on their guts to help with Nosema?
Not feed so much syrup.
Okay, no, that's, yeah, good answer, yeah.
I try to encourage them to collect
Change the pH of
nectar.
the syrup a little so it's closer to what Nosema doesn't live in.
What were you using for the feed?
Pro Sweet, have you heard of it?
Yes.
It's the invert syrup. So it's supposed to be the closest thing to honey.
The bees seem to love it. What I've seen of the people who buy it, it looks too expensive to me, but
It's kind of expensive. Pro Sweet.
I'm curious what the pH of it is.
Slightly acidic.
Because that's what you want is slightly acidic, and then the closest you can get to that.
My only concern with Pro Sweet is I heard that the sugar chain was longer than normal sugar, and hence it doesn't have the nutritional value for bees.
No, I don't think that's true. No. No, it's just.
It's just sucrose that has been, broken down by enzymes, the same enzymes bees use to break break it down.
It's high fructose syrup that's made from just.
Sucrose. Sucrose.
Dueling, that's another name for it.
Is it?
It's different manufacturing.
But the reason I'm not just using sucrose syrup is because I can't manage that with this many colonies. I can't be mixing it up every week and distributing it all over the place. And ProSweet, I have a guy that can deliver it into a tote and it doesn't go bad for 6 months. It doesn't crystallize, it doesn't ferment. And that's what I need for the scale of this project.
No, I've
So.
never fed that much to any bees. Usually I'll feed them enough just to get them going and then let them forage. But I know what you're trying to do is stimulate brood comb.
Comb building in general, yeah, yeah.
One of the risks if you feed too fast is that they plug up the drawn comb with this stuff faster than they draw new comb. So just a concern in the back of my head is feeding too fast versus stretching it out so that you get good amounts of, maximum brood production and maximum growth of the colony, not just packing in a bunch of syrup.
So what I've done to address that is I would feed them syrup for 5 days and then nothing for the next 5 days. And then what happens when I'm feeding the syrup is they take the stuff they already put into the comb and they start driving the water with it and they take it up. Okay. And they empty the brood area. But I found that gap in between with no feeding becomes important.
I think you could stretch your feeding out that way to avoid some of the problems of feeding too fast, which would also take some of the strain off of them from a gut, feeding situation. Something about it.
So the reason I was putting 2 feeders in is because I was only planning to go back every 2 weeks and I wanted them to have something available that whole time. But if I cut it back to the 1 gallon, then they would have a period with nothing.
Do you know the sugar content of ProSweet?
I certainly do. I was just on the phone with Man Lake the other day.
Dextrose and fructose.
I just need the total sugar.
There's no dextrose. How much total? Like 77% sugar.
Yeah, it's not quite there, but it's much closer to sugar, much closer to honey than normal sugar syrup.
Yes. So there's still sucrose remaining, but a lot of it has been broken down to fructose and glucose.
You're not going to have to take
Glucose is
water
dextrose.
out of it to make it honey.
No, it's pretty viscous.
It pours like a syrup.
Pours like pancake syrup?
With corn syrup, bees tend to store it in the cells a lot better than other types of syrup because it is thicker. You might actually end up getting them to store more of it than consume it. And that's fine, I guess.
No, I'm here for advice, so please advise.
The thinner the syrup, the more they put it towards the brood, and it stimulates wax production. That's my generalization of what I've seen and what I've heard from beekeepers.
Yeah, I think
Well, first of all, glucose is dextrose, but
Okay.
they're the same thing. Back to the feeding, I think that gap in the feeding he's talking about is important to keep them from swarming. Because I've seen these, and I get this from new beekeepers all the time, that they put a package in, they feed it constantly, and it swarms on when it's just barely even installed, and yet they'll swarm because they backfill everything with this constant supply of syrup, and there's nowhere for the queen to lay. Or even if they don't swarm, it sets them back because the queen has nowhere to lay. If she has nowhere to lay, then they can't raise any brood. So leaving that, feeding them whatever they want for a little while, and then letting them get that moved around so that there's somebody for the queen to lay. I think it's important to getting them to build up.
You might fill up 2 feeders the first time, and then when you come back the second, 2 weeks later, you might fill up 1 feeder. And you might look at the weather and say, it's going to be really cold and rainy and wet, and adjust it. But you're going to do everything the same across all 3 treatment groups at all the sites, right?
Yes.
The other factor is individual nectar flows. And if you give them syrup and there's a strong nectar flow, they're going to ignore it to the point the ants will come into your hive and get at it. if they can. And so it'd be best if you could know how the flows are doing and feed appropriately, and that might vary between locations. And you might find that you didn't need any syrup when you installed the packages because there was a flow of some kind, but then you encountered dirt later, and that might be when you need to feed. So that's another thing that, and then it's also going to vary between locations, so that's
Right.
a big factor.
Yeah.
You're installing this in fees in April, right?
Yes.
Mid-April?
Mid-April.
Okay, so like April 15th probably, somewhere
Yep.
thereabouts. So you put them in mid-April and you fill a feeder full. That should keep them from starving to death for at least the next 2 weeks. And you come back in 2 weeks, it's May now. And from May on, there's going to be things blooming unless you get a freak storm. If you get a freak storm, if you're paying attention to the weather, you'll know that. Otherwise, you know there's stuff blooming. Apples will be blooming by then. All the early fruit trees will be blooming. I don't know what all you have in Pennsylvania. You'll have probably Bartlett pears and the rosebud.
Plums,
Yeah,
raw
rosebud,
plums
some
are early, then you
The
get.
plums will be about April 15th
Black
probably.
locust is about the.
So pretty much
last
from
week of
April
May.
15th on, unless you get a freeze in there, you're going to have stuff blooming. So it really doesn't matter after that.
Right. Well, like you were saying, I count on them ignoring the syrup when they don't need it. Right? I would rather they are foraging, and if I see that they haven't eaten anything, then I'm done feeding. So I think that it could be fair to say feed until they stop taking it.
I
But-
wouldn't do that.
But yeah, because every colony is going to be different in the amount of syrup they have up to. So you have to feed them all the same amount, and some of them it might not be enough.
They're all
Right.
hoarders. They can't help but store it, so they never stop taking it. They may not take it as much because there's a flow out there, but they're never going to stop taking it. They're just going they can't help themselves.
Well, if there's
I think they do. They slow it way down at least.
I admit they slow it down. Yeah. And sometimes different colonies are different. This colony may be more.
We'll have to make-
likely shut down more
yeah.
than this one, but the problem is that because they're orders, they keep filling the brood nest up, and then they know what they're clean with. That's the problem you want to avoid.
Right.
So, if you just fed them, I would probably put the gallon feeders in, feed them, come back in 2 weeks. If they eaten all that, and if it's weather's still pretty rainy and whatever, okay, fill it up again. And by the second time you filled it up, if you're doing this every 2 weeks, you're in the middle of May. There's stuff blooming from then on. There's no point feeding after that.
Well, my local beekeepers tell people feed constantly the first year.
Yes, they do.
That's what
And
everyone
they're
says.
wrong. But
Yeah, I was like, really?
and they cause
I don't want to.
And they cause all these poor new beekeepers to have their bees swarming like right and left.
Yeah.
And then they just blame them for being poor beekeepers. And the problem is that they're following their advice. But
Go ahead.
Two other things to think about. I don't know what your weather's like in Pennsylvania. In Texas, where we have high humidity. If I have high humidity, I don't put a top board on, I get mold in the hive. So any hive that has a frame feeder will have a top board on it. So the moisture goes above and not inside. The second thing to think about is, as long as you use frame feeders, you don't get a lot of worker bees. And I found out recently, last week, the reason because that if you have foragers that come in, the foragers keep the bees from advancing into the forage bees because of some of the lactic acid they excrete. So what I've done with mine is I'm moving away from frame feeders. As soon as the hive is slightly more mature, I move away from frame feeders and I feed externally. That way I've still got all the foragers coming in, so the bee still thinks it's naturally coming in. But as soon as it's internal, then the worker bees start taking from the frame and not the foragers.
Yeah, the problem with research, though, is I want to measure how much syrup did they take.
Yeah, okay. My way you can't. You don't have to
Exactly.
5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something to think about in terms of build-up of your colony.
Gotcha. Yep.
Would you say it causes one? Or what did you observe?
But when I use frame feeders, I get less workers in the colony. Because what I found out last week from an article I read on it is that the bees that move from being the worker bees inside that do moving the food.
You have less workers in the colony because they transition to field bees earlier.
Yeah.
Got it.
Are you going to like weigh the colonies or check the number of drones? Some of those packages are filled with drones, like 1 million drones.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we should talk about all the things I'm going to be measuring. So Why don't you guys tell me what you think I'll measure? What should I measure to determine how healthy are the bees? How successful are they being? What do you think are the important things to measure? Class.
Well, back to the thing I was talking about before, how many Varroa are in the workers and how many are in the drones. What I really want to do is map that out over the season. So I want to see what because it's, I suspect, but I don't know this, that the Varroa are probably peaking higher in a small cell colony that has lots of drone comb early in the spring because they have lots of drone comb and they're being successful, the Varroa are. And then there's less drones in the summer and it's dropping off here, and then there's less drones in the fall and it's dropping off here, where in a conventional colony they're reproducing mostly in the workers, even though they sort of prefer drones. Most of the reproduction is taking place in the worker cells. So the population of the Varroa is maybe not as successful at the beginning, but it just keeps getting more and more Varroa as and that's all right as the bee population is increasing with it at first. But then the bee population starts to fall off in the fall. They're still reproducing in the workers, except there's less workers for them to reproduce in, and so the Varroa numbers are still climbing and the bee numbers are falling, and now I end up with Varroa and bees, where I suspect this probably goes more like a higher peak here and more of a fall off here, following the population of bees more at the tail end going into winter.
Okay, so you're hypothesizing.
That's my hypothesis.
What do I need to test that hypothesis?
I just need to count Varroa and workers and Varroa and drones over the course of the season, so I need to know, periodically what it is, so I can plot it over.
What else do I need to know? Not just like the.
You need to know how many frames of worker brood, how many frames of drone brood are in the colonies at each inspection.
Or percentage, not frames, because they can have both
Yeah.
one frame. But
But if you measure it in terms of, yep.
no, I'm saying it's a percentage, it's not number of frames.
Yeah, I don't think I care about the hive strength so much as I care. It might be a useful piece of information to know what percent of the brood that's in there is actually drone brood as opposed to it got backfilled with honey. So, in other words, in the spring, they're going to be laying lots of drones, and this is all going to have brood in it. Somewhere in the middle of summer, maybe half of it has brood in it, and toward the fall, maybe none of it has drone brood in it.
Well, and when there's no open drone brood, the Varroa have no drones to go into, and then you have a shift. And,
Possibly.
And so it's going to be important to know that, because your mite counts might change. You might have a dramatic increase in mites, right? And then you might observe other things when the mites start going into the worker cells preferentially. Normally,
So-
I don't know what's going to happen. That's
yeah,
what I want to know.
well, you gotta measure this. You don't know what's going to happen, so you have to measure everything.
So I also need to know how many, the mean abundance of the mites on the adults.
Well, you're going to have that from your
I know, I'm making a complete list.
Well, you're already doing your sugar shake.
Alcohol washes.
alcohol washes.
Okay,
You need that.
okay. D?
What do you mean by might increase with the drone being stopped because they can't reproduce in the worker brood 4.9 or lower? By being external, all they're going to do is groomed off, thrown on the bottom where you're going to find them dead, and you need to be able to differentiate what they're killing off versus what is actually reproducing, and that's a big difference.
Right, so I need to measure Varroa mites on adults and Varroa mites in the brood and differentiate between worker and drone brood to see where they're.
And I did a paper on that down in Carmen, and the USDA wouldn't even come back the second time to look at it, because within 6 months it was shown the infestation cells under 2%, and there was no problems, 4.9 or lower. And you can use that for the paper here for parallel.
I'm totally going to do that.
So my hypothesis would be that when there's no drone brood available, you're going to see an increase in the percentage of worker brood that gets infested.
No.
Then you're going to likely see them chewing it out during that period of time.
It'll go in but it won't be reproducing in the worker brood, and she's gonna have to look at that, because that's where you see the head, neck, and back mites with the chewing out, which was written about, and that's what that chewing out is all about, that Spivak and all the rest of them tried to put below ground.
So this goes along with your inspecting, looking for mite infestation. When you do find mite infestation, you need
Are they reproducing?
to determine if they're reproducing or not reproducing, because that's a...
You won't find them reproducing 4.9 or lower.
Well, we need to collect the data to know that.
I'm proving it for you, D.
Yeah, we want to know the answer to the question.
So you can see how it parallels.
I will, absolutely will.
Okay, let me throw out one more hypothesis of what might be happening here.
Yep.
Is, and this is Mel Disselcone's hypothesis. His hypothesis is if you do a brood break, which in a way we're kind of doing by the shift between there were a lot of drones, now there's no drones, and now they're moving into here, whatever. His hypothesis is you do a brood break, all these Varroa end up out of the cells, and now there's no brood for them to go in, and they're starting to get kind of desperate, and now all of a sudden they're raising brood. They all go rushing into the cells, and all of those bees die. All that larva dies because it's so overloaded with Varroa, and the Varroa die with them. And then you get this a lot less Varroa after that. Now that I don't know what I think of that hypothesis, but that's one other possibility is that as this shift happens where they've been reproducing really well in the drones, so we have lots of Varroa, and now there's no cells for them to move into, and now they move into these larvae, and the larvae actually die along with the Varroa, and now there's not virtually no drones for them to move into. And
Who is this
don't know
again?
What happened right in there? What's that?
Who hypothesized this?
He's got all of that online, plus he has a book out on a lot
Just
of
look up like OTS, I think.
If you look up OTS, or you
OTS,
look
clean
up outbreeding mites, or
The most expensive book for clean
You got the nice little binder one?
anyway, his theory is that the reason a brood break works well is because you have all these desperate mites who suddenly only have a little tiny bit of brood when the queen first starts laying, and they're all desperate, and they all move in, and you end up with 6 or 7 mites on every larva. Then the larva just dies, and so do the Varroa. And so that's what cleans that out.
You know, that brood break, usually you have about 1 to 2 week period where there's no brood in the hive at all, because you've had a queen, the queen's been gone, and now you have a new queen that starts to lay. I don't know that that'll happen when they stop raising drones, but there will be a switch, and if the mites either won't be able to reproduce in the cells on the worker comb, or the reproduction will be less, and you'll be able to see that in the number of mites at that point. So an observation of whether there's drone brood in the hive or not is kind of a key point in your graph to deciphering what might be happening as the numbers are going up, trending up or down at different rates.
So yeah, you probably want to know the percent of drone brood to worker brood at each stage along the way.
Right.
Yep.
So
Well, that's easy.
then
Well, it's a
As
lot
far
of
as-
work.
as far as
It's
what's
a lot of
happening,
handwork.
Oh, I know.
I hope you're prepared.
I don't understand what trying to say. They want things to count.
I told you, you get a PhD by knowing how to count.
Yeah, but you can't spend too much time in a hive without starting to chill the brood. And to actually sample worker brood and drone brood throughout the season, you're gonna have to do that multiple times.
You want to know the quickest way to do this though and not spend much time in the hive is you just pull a frame out and take a picture, and pull a frame out and take a picture of it. You figure it's all going to average out on the other side, and you always take a picture of one side of every frame and you put them all back in there. You can go back and
But if you're uncapping frames of brood to look at
Sure.
Varroa on the larva, that's
But
gonna be-
actually, if you don't want to leave the hive open very long, you just take a forkful and throw it in a cup, and a forkful and throw it in a cup, put the lid on it, mark what hive it's from, and move to the next one. You can count mites later, you don't have to count them now.
That's true.
So-
But that's a lot of handwork.
Oh, it is. I'm not questioning that it's a lot of work. I'm just saying.
Do you want to come and help me?
But you're saying you're leaving the hive open too long. I'm saying you can shortcut a lot of this stuff and not leave the hive open that long.
What's really important is you have to monitor not only the mite levels, but the viral levels.
Yep.
Side by side with the mites. And
Yep.
probably also not just Nosema, but the other bacteria in the gut, whether they're beneficial or not. And you're going to have to weigh the hives.
Yep.
And that's going to be tricky because you have to weigh them multiple times in the
Well, you
year.
got
And
hive
it's really-
finder, it's not tricky, you just
Huh?
walk up and download the data.
yeah, that's going to be either expensive or, but
You never know, hive finder might cut them a deal, you never.
yeah, that's true.
I only need 300. No, we have one of those, the pyramid thing that you use for like a deer or whatever. That's what we have.
You're going to also need to sample mites in the fall and maybe winter and the spring,
I'm sampling mites every month.
even in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Well,
If it's warm enough.
I have a vacuum. Have you ever seen one of those?
Vacuum for bees.
Sucking up bees into a jar?
After taking all these samples throughout the year, how can that not affect the health of the colony?
Well, of course it does.
It's about consistency. So if you do it to them all, then they're all equally harmed.
Yes, but that slight difference could make a big difference in the survival of the colony. And so how much of just the sampling affected the survivability?
It's definitely Schrodinger's cat, but you're putting the same stress on all of them, and part of what you
That's
want to know is
very
can they do they do well, against whatever stresses they have to be up
But
against. So.
how much handling do feral colonies get?
these aren't feral anymore, these are managed colonies.
I know,
Treatment
but
free.
we're
Yeah, this is treatment-free management.
We're trying, okay, yeah, for sure, but you're trying to get feral genetics thinking that that is the silver bullet, when maybe part of it is environmental.
No, I don't think she's going into one silver bullet here.
Oh,
She's
no.
doing small cells, she's doing feral
No,
stock.
but she's not using log hives. She's not using thicker walled hives. There's a lot of different factors that might influence Varroa or other, or just the success of the colony. And yeah, I know you're making it all.
But the system, you gotta remember, the system is based on the anecdotes, right?
Yeah,
Of
we're doing,
beekeepers who are successful doing this already, and they're not using log hives, and they're not doing these things that you're bringing up.
she's trying to repeat what we're trying to do.
So where are these queens coming from?
Well, New
The queens are the best feral stock from my area that I can get.
That's being managed by people who captured these feral colonies.
Right.
So they're from managed hives.
Yeah, feral colony.
Feral origin.
Give her the queen, she's on
And
the
Are
queen.
they kind of doing with no treatment, they're managing with no treatment?
Correct.
The thing I like about this study is that I think it's not one silver bullet, and you're not trying to test that one silver bullet.
It's very different and difficult to explain.
But reality is a much more complex system than this one aspect.
It's not just small cell, it's not just genetics, it's not just anything. It's doing all of this together. Thank you.
What's going to happen is when you get to the end of this, right, you're going to get an answer. And if the answer is that you created a stable system that works, people are going to criticize you that because you didn't do the study a different way, you don't know why it works.
Well, that's my future, the rest of my career.
But the purpose is
Right?
to show that it works.
Yes.
Nobody has done that yet.
At the end of the day.
Or show that it doesn't.
But 3 groups, and you're gonna have, at least 2 of those groups are gonna be monkeys flinging poo at you. So you just have to figure out which one is gonna be flinging poo at the end of the day. That's all we're trying to figure out.
Someone in the back had their hand up long ago.
Robyn, I wanted to know how many people you have available as your assistants when you open up the colonies to make your measurements, to make your sampling.
Okay.
Are you by yourself or, say, 3 people?
Yeah. In my other study, I learned that having more than 3 total people is not helpful. You do or don't? Yes. So I have, and I was telling her, retired people are the best because they're very excited to learn and they have time. And that is who has come to me and said, I would like to help you. So I have a very dedicated retired person that works side by side with me. I'm going to be managing 4 of the farms. There's Katie Evans. She's the field technician at Penn State. She's in charge, and she has a retired professor that is excited to work with her. And then that whole West Virginia thing, they've got like crazy manpower down there. So what we're doing is we have also funding to pay a beekeeper to come to each farm to help us. So I've hired beekeepers that live in each area because some of them are quite far from where I live, and if I have to just pop the cork on 3 queen cages, I don't want to drive 2 hours, spend 15 minutes, and drive 2 hours back. So that person will be able to do like a quick thing in the evening or whatever up where they are. And so the team of 3 is a data recorder, and then 2 hives open at a time. I've learned that I can manage with that team about 36 colonies a day. And so I'll visit one farm, do through all the 3 apiaries that day, go home, the next day, the next farm, and I'll do 4 days, and then I'll take a week off from the field and then go back again. So I'll visit each farm every other week. One of those visits is just going to be a really quick, okay, is it queen right? Do they need a super? Like, is everything okay? And the next one will be this huge sampling day where we sample all these different things, you know, the population, take, you know, virus samples, Varroa, Nosema, all that stuff. So those would be like, I call those the long days. So we'll have like a short day, 2 weeks later, long day, 2 weeks later, short day, then long day. That's the plan, and I know there's going to be all bazillion trips in between and craziness and whatever, but that's my...
So I agree with his concern that keeping them open for too long has its own major stress on the quality. And so we need a way to continue to sample, move quickly, and really focus on minimizing, still getting good data, but minimize the time that the colony is actually open.
Right.
I was also going to just ask if it would be possible to incorporate another set of 9 or 12 colonies and really do I don't know if this is considered a control, but really don't touch them until the end of the study and let them manage themselves. So then at the end you can do whatever the long day with all the sampling and kind of see at the very end of the season this hive these who have potentially hopefully survived without any opening, without any management at all. The data may or may not reveal something different. The control would be for this experiment.
I think the difficulty with that is if I don't do anything with them at all, then what did I measure and how did I measure it? Because it's hard to measure something when I don't ever open them up. So
maybe like
I'm not saying it wouldn't be a nice idea, I just don't know how to accomplish it.
I'm not sure that.
What we're all looking for, I think, is survivability in the end.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing, right? Whether or not it lives through the 2 or 3 years of the study, right?
Yeah, but you need the data to correlate to the survival, right?
Yes. But stress caused by beekeeper has an effect on the health of the colony and on. Well, it is a lot. And the other thing is, you've got, standpoint. Every time you open the hive, you are making it more susceptible to pathogen, right? Okay, now you're opening them all, that's fine.
Do you have a paper on that?
Well, it's just...
I'm just being a devil's advocate here.
Yeah, no,
Are you telling me what you've heard 1,000 times from commercial beekeepers, or is there some data?
I'm basing it on the fact that the colony is, like, the hive itself is like our skin, and like splitting them open is like cutting us open. And yeah, that's not very scientific at all, right? I know, but the thing is, there's an airflow control called, the natural airflow, ventilation. You open a hive, you automatically disrupt that. You automatically disrupt whatever conditioning the bees have done to the air inside them.
But we have to open that up to
Yes, but.
To do the science.
Yeah, and you also have to open up to treat the other bees that are getting treated. Are you gonna also open up the hives that aren't getting treated for that same amount of time? No, because that's another point of stress of management.
It's part of the system.
But that wouldn't be managed.
But she's trying to compare management systems, so the fact that you open it less
No.
is actually part of the management systems.
That's true, yeah. But if that's, yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I think a big day, you know, when the hives are open for a long time, once a month, isn't too bad. I think in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of people successfully managing bees, checking their bees like that once a month. Now, you know, popping all the frames and taking some quick photos, that's maybe a little more than they do. The quick days are nice because you pop the lid, you're in there for 2 minutes, you just clean right, you're out.
Going through the brood nest once a month is not more than a lot of people.
A lot of people do
beekeepers
that.
go through the whole brood
That's
nest
extremely
once a month.
common.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that's uncommon.
I know people who do it more often than that because they're trying to prevent swarming, because they, you know, if they don't, they end up with a bunch of swarms. So overall, I understand exactly what you're saying.
And it's just like being sterile in your procedure too. Like, are you going to use a different hive tool and a different smoker for each hive? How do you know you're not spreading diseases from one to the other? And that's...
Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
I will use a blowtorch to clean the hive tool. I don't think the smoker is going to touch the hive, so that's irrelevant.
Your hand touches the hive tool, your hand touches the smoker.
True, I could wash my hands with alcohol.
Or do you have disposable gloves?
I don't want to wear gloves.
See, I don't think spreading is
Really hate gloves.
Probably the only thing that's going to skew is if you went through the treatment-free ones here, you picked up some beneficial bacteria that you might accidentally introduce to the treated ones and make them healthier. But, and you want to avoid that at all costs, because the last thing you want to do is make them healthier, right?
It skews the data in the fact that we're trying to separate different management systems, and if you're managing them all together, it's different than someone trying to manage them separately.
So let's say one of the hives comes down with sac brood, right? And then you're going to have data from that hive because you're going to be analyzing for sac brood. You're going to see a viral titer in hive 127B spikes, right? If it is spreading, you're going to have the data the following month that shows that it did spread. It's data, you know, you're going to learn from it. You can't shut down the collection of data for the sake of being worried that it's going to skew your data.
That's true.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of the stuff I'm doing is because it's research, right? Like, so I can at least blowtorch the hive tool before I move on to the other system, right? If I don't do it between each colony, you know, I can do it for each system. I could do that. I don't want a different hive tool for each hive. That would be a little bit excessive.
I've never cleaned a hive tool in my life other than it got too much propolis on it. I took my pocket knife and picked it up.
Yeah, but you also probably wouldn't dig your hive tool in a bunch of foul brood and then start opening a bunch of hives.
Of course not.
No.
But I'm opening healthy hives. I'm not cleaning my hives.
Full-blown chalk brood, if you had full-blown foul brood, would you treat the hive and destroy it, or would you just...
A treatment-free colony? If it has AFB, it's getting burned. Absolutely. Any colony that gets AFB is burned. Chalk brood? Let them handle it. D? Oh. Go ahead, D.
If you're doing a program based on survivability, what I was told in the end, like what I gave you there.
Yep.
And in there, you'll find only one page that says chewing out Varroa. But it's following a long study that was done that's paralleling exactly what you're doing right now. And in the end, I was told that if you match back to nature with only 1 or 2% infestation, the government doesn't want to come and see you. But I was told in Europe by the big ones over there, and I'm like talking with, you know, well, I don't want to get, you know, Tony Miller and Brother Adam and all big university, they changed to, the hygienic behavior and all this other stuff, rather than just calling it basically and describing what you're seeing and how you're doing, then the last thing I was told to do, which I'm doing now, that's following, like what this book is here, which is what a lot of that is there, that I was told to prove it, and yet it's published. I was told not to go into my hives monthly or whatever, just work them, and if it's sustainable and works with nature, if I haven't seen it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they're still alive and strong, I'm finally parallel in nature. You've got something you can show that no one else can see. And that's the routine I'm in now, working hives, picking up, crying in a way. They've been over 6, 8 months, maybe a year, laying over. They're telling me not to worry about it from Europe because that's how trees fall over in nature. You're empty cactus, empty cages where it falls down, that the bees can survive and live. And then, like I'm telling beekeepers, go through standing back up. They've been down 6, 8 months, a year or more. I haven't taken them through there. I'm finally going through the routine. And in a way, they're saying it's good maybe you're walking with crutches, and I'm saying, yeah, like, but if it parallels nature, that's the last thing you want to show, that you've got clean bees again. You're in tune with nature again, with all your microbes, everything in order for their digestive gut for 8,000 to 10,000 different microbes, which is what you need, which is why bees have always been studied by man for the healthy honey, the healthy propolis, the healthy pollen for eating, that in your worst dearth when everything crashed every 2,000 years, the only thing that was left was people that could get clean food and sustain with nature. And it's a lot of work, but there is hardly any work on it showing what really parallels nature. Now, showing what you're doing by taking information monthly is fine, but then you have to show that if you're really strong and you really match nature and you really have clean bees that are sustainable, then it's like I was told by the ones over in Europe, and I'm talking where Harold Singer just got a PhD following this stuff. He's going to be going deeper because I'm starting to stick it to him along with a few others off over in Spain, with the islands off the coast of Spain and through the Mediterranean. Then you have to leave them alone for you go deeper for the project, what you're doing, but you're not even touching some of those hives for 6 months, then a year, then maybe 2 years, and are they still matching nature?
Well, I think beekeeping's a fun thing to do, and I want to go into my hive sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what it's about. Like, I don't really want to just stick something in my yard.
You have to do that starting, but you have to do it lining up. And if you're going to do too small cell with 1/3 of the research, then you've got the right group here that you're talking to, with these guys that are into it deeper and deeper. And I might be a mean old, whatever you want to call it, because you don't back down. It's like you're doing it, you're going forward, you're following your bees' needs, not what you want, but what nature wants. And you're the first one that I've seen, and I like what you're saying because you're attempting to try to do that. And so that's
Thank you.
That's why I handed you that. But the chewing out Varroa that's listed there is the hygienic stuff. Spivak and then went in changing the name, saying, oh, look what I did. And it parallels with the Carmen research when the USDA wouldn't come back after 6,000 months because it was under 1 or 2% infestation, while the other 2 or 3 sides of the research were getting deeper and deeper, sicker. And it's a very parallel to what you're doing And so, I'd like to see you really complete it and go beyond to where it's like, I'm told to do, if you don't see them for a few years, they're either sustainable or they're not. They're either alive or you're not, because in the end, nature will either win with you or push you down.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, well, anyway, you're lining up for great things, you got great people you're talking to, and it's just putting the pieces by region, by climatic zone together, so you've got a lifelong project that you're getting deeper and deeper.
See, I think you could prove, which is kind of what she's saying, I think you could prove what I really want to know without counting any of this. All I really want to know is what survived, but I would love to know why.
Yeah.
And I think that this other data that I was talking about, like how many are in the drones, how many are in the workers, it might give us some clues as to what's happening that's different in conventional large cell and small cell, which I wouldn't know without gathering those numbers. But, you know, that they're surviving is nice to know, but the mechanism would be really nice to know.
Yeah, because if you're going to monthly or weekly looking, then you might go to 6 months, a couple of years down the road, and then another couple of years, you might go to see them once a year.
Yeah, she's got a point there too.
I could just take a nap instead of working. That'll be awesome.
So all your cleans are going to be marked, which gives you immediate knowledge when you have a super seizure take place.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to remark cleans after they're superseded.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if I do a split or something like that, we're gonna follow the lineage of each.
Yeah. So, and that opens up a whole line of potential genetic studies, because what you have here, you got the larger bees, the smaller bees, they're all starting from the same stock, so you can get a genetic, baseline, basically. And then one of the questions I have is, do you get different outmating to different populations? Because ideally, these come from the feral population of Pennsylvania, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your hope is that you have a feral population in the region, that they're outmating to that feral population preferentially over the other managed hives in your area.
Well, that's another thing for her to track. How are they, if you're bringing them from out of state and keeping them there localized over 3 years, how are they localizing?
Yeah.
What are the changes with your subfamily, colors, their body parts, and everything else? You have that heck of a lot of work to do.
Well, there's some things there you're going to be collecting samples, right? But there's almost a limited potential for analysis. And there might even be things that you don't think of analyzing today that you come up with 2 or 3 years from now, and having all that information about the lineage. And this queen superseded, the first year, superseded the second year. That's 2 degrees separated from the stock you started with. Did it diverge from the feral stock? What did it do? There's opportunities there that you won't even know what to do with it until you think of what to do with the samples sitting in the freezer 3 years from now.
Now, let me throw a couple of pieces out there in the hypothesis. You've probably seen Delaney's work on the feral versus domestic, and the fact that there doesn't seem to be that much of a feral, that much of the domestic stock ending up in the feral stock. There isn't that much happening, and it's kind of a repeat of Shepard's work back in the 80s or 90s, the 80s. It was very similar work where he was looking at the genetics of the feral bees versus the domestic bees, and they were actually distinctly different. And Delaney's work shows they still are distinctly different. And you would think that they would just all become homogenous, but they're not. So the question of why you might not be able to answer, but you might be able to shed some light on it, because I suspect that one of the reasons why is the size of the bees and the size of the drones is having an effect on which drones are mating with which queens, because the smaller cell tend to build smaller drone cells, and you tend to have smaller drones, they tend to be faster, they tend to fly further, they tend to fly longer.
Is there data on that?
They're flying further and longer. Yes, there's a whole bunch of, most of them were, they were looking at why the African genes were taking over, in areas where there were European bees, and they found that the African drones would fly longer and faster.
They're not
They weren't
African,
really-
it's just feral and smaller, and it's documented.
Well, that's
And
the
that-
question
and
we
that's
want
the
to
point I'm
answer.
trying to make, is that they're smaller, and that's probably why they're flying further and longer, is because they're smaller, because they're more efficient flyers. They're not.
Plus, they also keep the hive temperatures warmer in winter.
Well, there's a whole other study on
Yes,
that, and
there's a whole-
that they contribute to the hive creating heat, but that's not my point. My point is, if your large cell bees are shifting towards domestic genes, then they're out there mating with those cedar drones, and smaller cell ones, you started with the same basic genetics. If these are shifting more towards the feral genetics, then it may prove that that has to do with cell size and not something else. We don't really know the mechanism of why the feral bees seem to stay distinct, but I suspect it's size. I don't know.
So Joe, you study genetics? What do I need to keep? Workers? A set of 100 workers per colony, or 20? You know, like what do I need?
I'll think about it and let you know. I've been doing some reading on it. There's some pretty cool stuff that a few researchers have done. It's not totally exhaustive. You can sample like 30 bees from a hive. You're going to potentially have that. The only question is whether it's analyzable after it's been in alcohol for X amount of time. But
Well, because I'm already to do viral analysis and,
Oh, you already
immune
have
system stuff. Like we're
Yeah.
already doing it on dry ice, and then
You're already gonna have
would
the
it be
DNA.
some sort of DNA code thing that would be just saved as information instead of
yeah,
samples?
the question is whether you need to genotype individual workers or whether you can genotype a pool of workers, and I have to figure that out. Right, 30 analyses of 30 workers, or mash up 30 workers and do one analysis, and I think it's more of the former than the latter.
It seems like Shepard and Delaney are the ones that have done a lot of this work.
The other guy that's been active in it is Moritz, M-O-R-I-T-Z, in, I want to say, Germany, and he also had a study he was involved in looking at the German black bee versus their attempts to replace it with the Carniolan strain in parts of Germany, unsuccessfully, largely because the black bees, for whatever reason, were out competing their attempts to keep their Carniolans pure. So it kind of parallels what we've seen with African bees and their competitiveness. Yeah. So yeah, I'll have to do some more digging on that. I've only started to really dig into it in terms of what we could do, but there's a number of good studies that show that you can differentiate between feral bees and non-feral bees with a set of markers, and those markers are all published and used, and different people use different markers for different reasons. And same guy that I mentioned from Germany, Moritz, he did an interesting study where he had a number of satellite markers that are linked, and he was using them as a way to look at the number of different drones that an individual queen was mated to, and whether it was preferentially to known colonies in the area that had been genotyped, or in whatever the word for
You
gene
don't
drift.
differentiate between large and small bees, and you're going to look at several million sperm difference between the two.
Well, that's, you have to analyze.
And the smaller bees have more sperm than the bigger ones, and it's going to freak you out when you, and yet it's there pre-1917 and hidden in a lot of the
there's a lot
files over in Spain,
It's
Germany,
a little mind-blowing.
Russia. You're going to love it. Austria and that, but the files are there, let alone over in Japan, China. Even Australia has stuff. It's going to blow your mind.
Well, step one is obviously you got to see this through for 2 years and hopefully see the system working in a way that can get you more funding takes funding to do the kinds of genetic analysis that need to be done too, in addition to the RNA and virus stuff.
So I wonder how cheap some of that stuff has gotten these days because they do, I mean, you can get a genetic test on yourself for not all that much. Some big analysis done on that, so it's gotta be getting cheaper, all that technology's gotta be getting cheaper. I don't know how cheap it is, but.
Yeah, the problem is when one technology gets cheaper, they find a new technology that's so much better and so much more expensive. There was some analysis that we looked at, and apparently it's only effective now if a robot does it. So it's $350 per bee or something crazy. We're like, yeah, no.
Wow.
Can't afford it. You had your hand up.
I can sell you a robot that will run the analysis.
I came in late and I missed the first part of your talk, so the question I have, if you want to say, look, we've already covered it, that's fine. But you're mentioning feral colonies in Pennsylvania. Did you describe that population, where it is in Pennsylvania, the effective population size perhaps? Who's been locating the colonies, et cetera, et
The
cetera?
colonies are going to be used for queen removal. You mentioned.
So I'm doing a project where I'm starting almost 300 colonies. I'm getting comb builder packages, and then I'm going to requeen them all with local feral genetics. So maybe that's what you've heard about. So the local feral genetics are from eastern Pennsylvania, from beekeepers who have been collecting feral swarms, cutouts and things, and breeding from them for a number of years. And so they're going to use their best colonies of local feral managed bees to make queens for me to requeen all of my hives. And then what I'm interested in is the effect of management on their health.
I had a question here.
Yeah.
And we know that you have 300 colonies coming in. So what happens, or if you thought about, we know that there's a possibility that you may have some decide that I'm going to not stay, and then if they is gone, and then you have another colony comes in that's completely different, that's not one of the original 300, is that going to affect some of your data?
That certainly will, but I'm going to mark the queens with individual color numbered discs, so I'll know.
But if the queen's coming in, it's not one of the original ones to begin with, that's a whole
Then it may just be a colony that I manage on the side somewhere else.
Oh, okay, so you just say this is a specific...
They're out of the system.
Okay, out of the system.
How often are you going to try to find a queen?
When I notice an issue. So like in normal management, if I see eggs, larvae, and capped brood, I'm happy.
And you're going to assume, because you're checking them so often, that
I'll
it's
notice
not
a
a
swarm,
supersedure.
and I'll notice a supersedure happen.
Well, plus because it's marked, it should be a lot easier to see her.
Yeah, but they're pretty.
Yeah, once you get up to 6 mediums,
Don't count on that.
and you're looking for a queen, you're not
Yeah, but it's not going to be 6 mediums in the beginning.
No, but eventually you're going to want to see what queens survive, which ones have new queens, especially if, I mean, I'm assuming you're going to be at these so often you'll have a pretty good idea. But try to find every queen in your colony, in a yard of 25.
What I've seen
You're gonna
happens
be there.
is she's just there.
Well,
So you're
yeah.
gonna write it down.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna totally write it down. And if I think that something has happened, I'll look around. And if I see an unmarked queen in there, I'll be like, oh boy, that's not her. So, unless she, popped off. But there has to be data, there has to be some indication that was occurring.
So you have a timeline set that once they're installed, you're going to be checking every 2 weeks, every hive?
Yes.
For how long?
Well, 2 full years. Except for the winter months, there may be lots of time off.
So it's 2 weeks from April to like October.
Probably through November. I mean, it's been warm lately.
That's very intensive management. That's more intensive than anyone I know.
It's research.
It's not more intensive than anyone I know. I know some backyard beekeepers that are in there every day. So that's
Well, but for 300 hives, anyone running 300 hives.
You know, you're right. Anyone running 300 hives probably not seeing them that often because they don't have the manpower. If she's got the
I
manpower.
understand, yeah, you gotta collect the data, but as you progress in this, you might find it might be more valuable to sample less often.
Well, yeah, I'm sampling for Varroa every month, but I'm not sampling for viruses every month or nosema every month, because those researchers said it's okay to just do spring, summer, and fall.
Well, like if we want to do this genetic shift thing, you may only care about once a year.
Yeah.
Because all you really want to know is which ones are shifting and which ones aren't.
Right.
And what direction, what markers can you pick up that might be relevant to determining
You
something
certainly don't
along?
do that in a month. That would,
Right, couldn't even afford it, or
it would be totally unnecessary. It wouldn't prove anything.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, thanks for getting to this. Please keep us informed on progress that you make.
I will. So if you go on to that website, the lopezuribelab.com,
And it did load for me.
okay, so we're like blogging and all this and updating and all that stuff. So if you want to follow it, we also have a newsletter. If you want to subscribe to the lab's newsletter, about what we're doing.
And that's just your lab?
That's just the Lopez Uribe lab at Penn State.
But that's more than just this project? That's other projects?
Yeah, I'm technically, Marguerite is my supervisor, and so her feral bee project is part of it, and she also studies some native bees, so that may be included in there, yeah.